Hey folks, I'm Deke, and I'm really psyched to be back on my good pal Jeff Stevens' 1002nd album podcast. And today, our focus of conversation is going to be what we would consider our top five concert opening acts. So kick back, get a cold beverage and some chips, and let's rock and roll.
Hi, I'm Jeff Steven, and you're listening to the 1002nd Album Podcast. This season, we're talking about must-hear lists as I continue to ask people that are important to me all about the music that's important to them. Enjoy! Please welcome back, Deke.
Hey Jeff, glad to be here, and it's awesome that you're treating senior citizens on your podcast with respect.
I like it. And the first one to have the Grand Slam, 4 for 4. So
Yeah, there we go.
excited,
Yeah.
yeah, and excited. We've got a good topic today too. The idea of the must-hear five opening acts that we've enjoyed over the years. And I guess the opening question, Deke, would be, what is it about concert openers? Why are they discussion worthy today?
Well, I think you pay. I was always of the mindset that you pay money for a ticket. You want to go for basically the full meal deal, right? You want to get the opening act, whether there's one opening act or two or three or however big the bill is. I always found it funny where a lot of people didn't even pay attention and they just don't show up until the headlining act, and it's like, why would you drop that kind of cash? I mean, whether it's your vibe or not, you can still at least get yourself into the arena. You hit the merch stands, you just do whatever, and yeah. So of all the concerts I've been to in my entire life, I have never missed an opening act. So I can't complain about not getting my money's worth. So I think I got some pretty cool selections here. I got one really interesting one at the end, but yeah, let's rock and roll, buddy.
That's so intrigued. And I like that it's not like you're paying the full concert ticket, but in a way you're almost like investing potentially in a new artist that you might not have otherwise heard. And I
Absolutely.
find I find I'm kind of torn because there's some shows where I wish there was just the opener. Like I remember seeing Blue Rodeo and they did all of the one album, like front to back is set one, and then sort of a greatest hits in set two. And those were great, like an evening with sort of show. But then I think when we talk about the opening acts we've enjoyed, I'm also reminded like, oh yeah, openers can be pretty great too. So we're getting, two for the price of one sometimes in those shows. But yes, but they're not in any order like ranked of like
Oh,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But my question for you, Deke, is what was one of the openers over the years that stood out to you?
sure. I'll go with the most recent one, which took place here in Thunder Bay back on September 20th, 2024. And that was Living Color when they came and opened for Extreme here in town. And it was such a killer show. I mean, I don't think people realize in this town that it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to get two iconic guitar players, Vernon Reid from Living Color and Nuno Betancourt from Extreme, on a stage in Thunder Bay. I mean, it just blew my mind. I mean, Living Color, I mean, I go back, I picked up their album, the debut Vivid back in 1988. Great record. So I basically have followed them since then. And you know what? To be totally honest with you, Jeff, they were basically one of my bucket list bands that I always wanted to see. And for them to show up basically in my backyard was just like A plus. And I mean, they slammed out a 9 song set. They played about three or four from Vivid. And if I'm going to do a shameless plug here, but you go to my Distortion Den YouTube page, I posted a couple of clips of Living Color. With one of the tracks was "Open Letter to a Landlord," and Corey Glover, what a vocalist, and also I posted a second clip, I think, of Cult of Personality, and it Vernon Reid just shreds like a maniac on that thing. I mean, his pedal board was basically the length of your kitchen table. I mean, it was crazy, but it was so good. And then, like I said, they smashed out 9 songs, and then the last song of the set is each tour date. Because I mean, I cheat. I went on setlist.com, and Winnipeg, they ended their set with The Clash, Should I Stay or Should I Go? And then when they showed up to town the next night here in Thunder Bay, they did Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin. So, yeah, Jeff, definitely one for the ages for me, man. So
Oh,
good.
That's awesome. And I loved how Vivid was one of those albums that showed up in that 1,000 Watt Albums You Must Hear Before You Die.
That's
And
right.
so, and it sounds like they're also a band one must see before before all is said and done as well. So, and
Yes.
very courteous of them to stop in TV too, and you didn't have to go to Winnipeg or Minnesota or something like that.
Yeah.
So, oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing. And I went with the most recent or one of the most recent as my first one on my list as well,
Hmm.
where it was a group that admittedly I hadn't heard of before and I hadn't heard much from since. But for the 30-second window that I saw them play, just the audience was completely enchanted. And the duo was called Basat, or it might even Bassat. I'm not even sure how it's pronounced, but they were the
Okay.
opening act for. We went to go see a folk singer named Stephen Fearing here in Kingston, who played at a relatively new theater. It was a nice, intimate venue, and it was this male-female duet that they played a bunch. She was doing the vocals, he was playing an instrument, and again, and as an indication of how enthralled I was, I don't even remember what he was playing. It might have been an acoustic guitar, it might have been something else, but it was just the two of them playing. And at the end of their set, it was somewhere probably like a Living Color where it was 9 songs or so. And at the end of their set, the audience gave them a standing ovation and they came back out for an encore.
Wow.
And I don't remember ever seeing an opening act get the encore treatment. And so it was just such a unique experience that the you could tell the audience was just, riveted by the performance. They demanded more. The group Facade delivered, and it was just for getting such a great sound out of that two-piece, lovely harmonies. And I really should investigate them again, but just for that 1/2 hour I was exposed to them, off the charts, amazing. Basat from the 2025 Stephen Fearing concert here in Kingston.
And that's kind of cool because it goes to show you that the headliner that night didn't have an ego,
Yes, that's right.
right?
Yeah, there was no yeah. Where was my standing ovation
Yeah,
or that sort
right.
of thing.
Or, no, you're not going back out because people want you. This is my show. Like
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
none of that silliness, right? So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, and so he was wise to generously share the stage because the audience really enjoyed it. And I'm guessing your second one is also was an enjoyable one too. Where'd you go for the second?
The second one took place June 16th, 2017, and that was Ghost opening for Iron Maiden in St. Paul, Minnesota. And all the local people around Thunder Bay would know it as St. Paul slash Minneapolis, the Twin Cities as they're called. But this show took place on the St. Paul side of town, and my brother was the one who got us tickets. He knew Maiden was going to or sorry, St. Paul. See, I even screwed it up. St. Paul. And he said, let's go. And he goes, I'm really psyched that the band Ghost is opening. And I was like, I don't know. Like with Ghost at the time, I wasn't listening to them. I knew who they were, but like I told my brother, I went through all this in the early 80s with, Kiss and Motley Crue and Wasp for a few albums and Alice Cooper, like the whole makeup feel. I'm like, I'm an old guy, man. I just don't know if I can invest in this. And then one of my daughters, Lexi, on her playlist had Square Hammer. And I didn't mind it, but I thought, well, okay. And then we went to the show. And I have to tell you, I was totally blown away at his present Tobias Forge, who's the main ghost guy, the Pope. He keeps changing his name, Pope this, Pope that. And but what a spectacular band he had. Maiden, I guess, he had a full basically stage. He had a staircase up to the drums and the keyboards, the ghoul as they were called back then. He was playing a guitar. And Maiden let them use the full out smoke machines, and they had some real great lighting, like the green lights I vividly remember. And the crazy thing, Jeff, is they opened up with the only song I knew, which was their biggest song. They came out blasting out Square Hammer right off the bat. Boom! But after that, they were playing songs which I wasn't familiar with. And then when I got home a few months later, they put out a live album, and it was like, I remember hearing songs called like Absolution and From the Pinnacle to the Pit. And I was like, holy crap, like I totally dismissed this act until I saw them live. And probably of all the shows I've been to, that was the only show I went into not knowing, not doing my homework on an opening act. Because I really had no interest. I was there to see Maiden, right? For me, it's all about Maiden.
Yeah.
But it was like, wow. And yeah, totally blown away by Ghost. I mean, I would love to go see them again at some point, but yeah, that was a good memory and a really good show. And kudos to Maiden; they didn't feel threatened by an opening act by allowing them more stage, more lights, smoke, and props and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a fantastic show, and their Ghost was definitely a mind blower for my old noggin at that.
Love it. And yeah, kudos to Maiden because I can picture so many shows where the opening act gets this like seemingly 5 square foot of stage to like where they've got all their
Yeah,
gear and then it
yeah,
gets shuffled off to reveal the giant set for the opener.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's great they were able to share the smoke machines and the works of them. That's awesome. And it's funny, I've seen the people wearing the t-shirts but never investigated further, but I'm now intrigued yeah, to hear Ghost because that sounds yeah, where it's
Mhm.
not like the visuals aren't gimmicks, but it's just part of a whole performance. And so that
Yeah.
sounds really promising. I like that.
And just to add, since that show in 2017, whatever he's put out since then, I've either bought it on vinyl or CD.
Yeah.
So yeah, he won the old man over.
Yeah. And I like that the power of a really good opener can do that. And actually that fits with my next one where I'd like to think as Canadians we're always well behaved like the crowd was at the Bassett performance where they generously applauded each song. But the band I've seen more than any other would have been the Tragically Hip. And
Yeah,
I can't say the audience was always quite so patient as often chants of hip 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 would start up
yeah,
mid-set for the various openers, which was sometimes I guess maybe a bit of a thankless task where you're the person standing in between the audience and their beloved Tragically Hip. But there was one band that came through Kingston in I think it was 2013 that I don't think a single hip chant was heard, and that band from Hamilton, Ontario, the Arkells. And so
wow,
when the Arkells toured with the hip, I think at that point they'd only had the first 2 albums out, so I don't think High Noon had come out yet. So the set list was mostly the first 2 albums, which was great. And it was one of those groups where I liked them going in. I was familiar with some of the hits, but much like you with Ghost, where the second I'd seen that show, all of a sudden had to get to the rest of the discography and stock up
yeah,
on anything Arkells after that. And what was neat is that at that stage in the game, Max, the lead singer, I don't think he was fully in his showman mode either, where he was still sort of playing a guitar on, I believe, most of the songs and sort of the singer guitarist. But eventually, I think, and it might have been that I think he's even credited touring with the Hip with Gord to be like, you know what, I'm ready to be the front man and just be dancing and just like not hiding behind a guitar, I think was the language he used for it. And
yeah.
but for their ability to not generate hip hip chants during their set and for turning me into a lifelong fan after the Arkells opening for Gordon the Gang back in 2013.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. And the you went as far back as 2017 on the last one. Where did you rewind to for the third one?
Back to October 15th, 2001, and this time another show that took place down in the Twin Cities, but this time over on the Minneapolis side at the Target Center, and that was when the Cult opened for Aerosmith. And the Cult, being in 2001, they had just come back with the fantastic album Beyond Good and Evil, which is probably one of my top three Cult records. And so I've always loved it. I even loved it before we went and saw the show. And but the Cult, they were kind of in a weird spot at that time, right? Because after their '94 self-titled album, the white one with the ram on the cover, I don't know if they broke up or if they went on hiatus for like 6, 7 years. So they lost a lot of traction, right? So I guess they almost had to basically start from ground zero. And it was just kind of surreal because a band with that big of a catalog, they only had like 45 minutes, right? So of course, they played the hits, Love Removal Machine, Wildflower, She Sells Sanctuary, and but in their list of 8 or 9 songs, they were able to go and play a deep track, and they pulled out Peace Dog from the Electric album, second song in the Electric record, one of my all-time fave albums, and yeah, that was so good. I remember I was there with my buddy T-Bone, and as soon as we heard that opening Billy Duffy riff, that we just high-fived and we hollered like a couple of teenage yahoos, and people around us were going, "What the hell?" I was like, "Yeah, man, that's what we were." You know, it was so cool that they dug that one out, and yeah, it was surreal seeing them as an opening act. But since then, they're basically back to auditorium size level. They were actually in town a couple of years ago, and you know, to see him as a headliner a few times since 2001. I mean, they deliver the goods live, and Billy Duffy's as I call him, the king of street rock riffs
Yeah.
on the guitar. I mean, he's so good. So yeah, I really enjoyed the cult, and it was of course Ian Asbury, Billy Duffy, and they had Matt Sorum again on
Oh,
the
nice.
drums for that tour. So yeah, so that is my, I guess that would be my third pick, Jeff.
Nice. Oh, I like it with the GNR connection there with Matt. I like that a
Yeah, you
lot.
got her.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right.
Nice. And I love when yeah they reward the fans in the audience with those deep cuts like Peace Dog
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So oh, fantastic. It was funny. And at that Art Kellis gig, they played a song where I don't think it had been a single, but they had the line like "You head back to Kingston," and so it sounded almost like they were pandering to the audience, but it's like no, that's actually a lyric in the song. And so, but yeah, good fun though. Nice.
It's an easy way to win the crowd over.
Oh yes, they knew what they were doing, I think. So that's good.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
The for my third one, I went from the most recent to my most seen band to this one was the furthest concert I remember seeing, where when Wendy and I were in Glasgow, Scotland in 2005,
Wow.
and it was on the day of the Live 8 concert, like the 20-year anniversary of Live Aid. They had those 8 concerts around the world. And so we were going to go see Coldplay, who is they were the headliner. They'd played in London in the afternoon and flown back to Glasgow at night. So they were in a just fired up, huge energy. But the opener that I ended up becoming a big fan of after the show was a band called Supergrass. And so it was one of those groups that I knew the song "Feel All Right." Like it was one of those like oh, it was in '90s movies and that sort of thing. But as they went through the set, it's like oh yeah, I know this one and I know that one and this, and it was
Yeah,
one of those
yeah.
ones that just yeah, just it might have been the energy of the day, the novelty of seeing them definitely out of my usual element. But it was such a great sort of crowd, a great feel, and the songs were just stellar. So again, usual story. Immediately invest in some more Supergrass over the years, and yeah, just a solid show for my furthest geographic one back in Scotland in
That's
2000.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's nice. I like those ones that are. It was an outdoor venue too, where I can't remember what the name of the park was, but when the elements cooperate too, and we like it was like ideal weather conditions when they were in between. I think there was another opener as well, and then in between the different sets, they were showing the live stream of the Live 8 concert too. So it's sort of like we'd see an opening act, then it would go back to the screen, then another opening act, and then back. So just a fun day overall too, which never hurts.
Yeah, that's fantastic,
Yeah.
man.
Nice. And how about round four? Where'd you end up on the fourth one?
That took place August 20th, 1994 at the CNE in Toronto, and that is when the Stone Temple Pilots opened for the Rolling Stones. And Jeff, guess how much the tickets were that day?
Oh, it might have gone into double digits. Was it like in the $10 range or?
I wish it was
I,
$34.
okay, I was gonna say like it felt like it would be like ridiculously low, but 34 is still a veritable bargain these days. So it's like you're
Wow.
paying $34 in service charges these
They would
days.
not those bands wouldn't want you as their manager. They'd be
No.
nobody money.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice. So
But
at the CNE, love it.
yeah, and that's when they were touring. Stone Temple Pilots were touring on the just released Purple album, and Vaseline. The video was all over Much Music. Remember when Much Music played videos? And I think Interstate Love Song had just come out as well as the video. And man, I bought the first album, and I thought out of all the Seattle bands at the time, because '94, I mean, we know the whole cast of characters with the scene, right? I thought Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden were probably my two fave acts, and Stone Temple Pilots were fantastic, and they basically really focused on the Purple album. I mean, you could see the charisma that Wayland had as a frontman. I mean, he was snazzy dressed. It's almost like, not comparing the two, but when you go to the Stones concert, a lot of people are watching Jagger. It was that way for me with the Stone Temple Pilots. I was really watching Wayland because he is very visually, uh, what would be the word I would use? Stimulating, I guess, because he was doing his slippery, sliding, grooving, dancing, shuffling, snaky bit across, and it was he was bang on. I know, he got into certain things through life and whatnot, but that unfortunately, he passed and whatnot. But at that time, that band was firing on all four cylinders, and the crazy thing was, they played quite a few songs, but the two I really wanted to hear, Wicked Guard and Dead and Bloated, they didn't play. That just goes to show you that the wealth of songs that they already had. And like I said, they were really pushing the Purple record. I remember hearing Army Ants and, a couple of the other things off that record. Maybe, what was it called? Meat Plow, I
Yeah.
think they played. And yeah, so yeah, it was so good. And, it was one of those shows where the Stones, they would go from city to city and almost rotate their opening acts. I think the show before Toronto, it was going to be the Counting Crows were huge at the time. But then we saw the list of opening acts, and we saw like Counting Crows, and they had I don't know, I think it was Sheryl Crow was on for a few shows, Stone Temple Pilots, but they never said what cities these bands were. As it got closer to the show, they said Stone Temple Pilots, and I was like, oh, yes.
Nice.
So, and that was the only time I ever was able to catch them live, and it's a good memory, and it was a great show. The Stones were good, and yeah, STP, man,
Yeah. No,
one of my.
the brothers are amazing. That's
Well, I was going to
yeah.
say that's the
Yeah.
other thing too. I love the dynamic of the
Yeah.
brothers because you have the guitar player Dean DeLeo,
Yeah,
DeLeo,
that sounds right. DELEO, I think. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
DeLeo. He looks like he just rolled out of bed,
Yeah.
you know. And then you got his brother on bass across the stage, Robert, who looks like with his slick back hair and his mirrored shades, he looks like a DEA agent, right? Like I just love their whole vibe. It's so cool. And then you got a raggedy looking drummer back there
Yeah.
holding
Keeping
down
it
the
all
beat.
together. Yeah.
And then you got the snazzy dressed up front man. Like they
Yeah.
made it work, and it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
it was awesome, man. They're
Oh,
they're
love
they're
it.
a great band.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I never got to see them as STP. I did get a chance to see Velvet Revolver years down the line, and Waylon, charismatic is exactly it. Like he was just there was something captivating about him on stage where usually I find like as a guitar player, I often watch the guitarist's hand, but when Waylon was on stage, like slithering around, as you say, like you can't not watch that and see what he's
Yeah,
up to.
yeah.
So, so good. It was funny when we talked about doing openers. I was wondering if we discover we somehow ended up at the same show, and we got two out of three here where it involved the Rolling Stones. It was
Ah,
in Toronto, but
I,
rather than being at the CNE, it was at Downsview Park in by far the biggest show I've ever been to, which was they've since I think nicknamed it SARS Stock from
yep.
2003. And as good as the Stones were that night, you couldn't keep up with the band that played before them.
No,
Akadaka, AC/DC was
yeah, man,
off the charts that
deadly.
night. And so it was one of those ones where it feels strange to think of AC/DC as an opening act, but
Mhm.
technically they weren't the headliner that night. And even though like I think when I saw the photos of the event after the fact, I think we must have been like a kilometer back from the stage. Like it was such a huge event, but it didn't matter for a second because just the energy Angus and company brought was just contagious in the best possible way. And yeah, and it was funny because that show, I don't know if you remember that at the concert, it also had Rush was there.
Mhm.
I think Blue Rodeo was there, and incongruously Justin Timberlake was there. And we didn't get there in time for his show because I think I had an ex accounting summer exam that afternoon, and then a bunch of us drove up from there. But I remember that's when I did become a fan of Justin Timberlake because people had been throwing water bottles at him as he performed. And after the show, he was interviewed and he said, "You know what? If I was going to go see Rush and AC/DC, I probably wouldn't want to see me either." And that's sort of self-deprecating. I thought that's pretty good, nice. I like that
Good way of
touch.
looking at it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so much like you, it was a Stones opener that stole the show for me. That was AC/DC back in 2003.
Yeah, you can't follow AC/DC. I'm
No.
sorry. You can't. Not with that sound. I mean, those
No.
buzzing, crunching guitars and yeah, just a wall of sound. You're not gonna, no.
No, and none of AC/DC's tunes had a sort of gentle closing to it. It was always just humongous finish each time too. It
Bam!
was- Nice. So that's four from each of us. The question is, Deke, where did you go for round five?
Round five, and my last pick is took place October 6th, 1979, when John Cougar and the Zone opened for Kiss in Duluth, Minnesota. Now, Jeff, I was 12 years old. This was a 12-year-old birthday gift from my parents. I had cool parents, like my mom and dad, they were church going folk every Sunday. And, they took me down to see Kiss, and there's people outside holding Knights and Saint in service and all that. And, they dismissed that. And, as long as I wasn't burning down things and trashing things, I think they were fine with me listening to Kiss, right? And not worrying about what I was doing. They just knew I was home all the time in my bedroom listening to Kiss records. And, you know, the funny thing with that show is Judas Priest was advertised as the opener. Now, I'm 12 at the time, and the only records I had in my collection was I think I had about 8 Kiss records, and I had Cheap Trick live at the Budokan. That was my listening library at that time. So I didn't even know who Judas Priest was. But when they announced that at the arena show, this is my very first concert, and they announced that, Judas Priest not here tonight. Please welcome John Cougar in the Zone. He got his ass royally booed. Like people were booing throughout his whole set. Now you have to remember, this is John Cougar 3 years before American Fool, before Hurt So Good and Jack and Diane. Like it goes to show you how much work he had to put in to break through. And I think when I saw him in '79, he was on his third album already. And I guess he wasn't making that much in sales or anything because obviously he was still an opening act. So he was still kind of, I guess, rather unknown. But the Duluth crowd didn't want any part of him. And there's me sitting in the crowd, waiting for Kiss, and just watching these people like just throw, like, I don't know if things were getting thrown, but I just remember just the crowd just being nasty. And I'm thinking, does this happen at every single concert? Like, like as a 12-year-old, you could be pretty easily swayed, right? Now, and this is the only time that's ever happened. And he did get a cheer when he announced this would be his last song of the night. The good old mock cheer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did his thing and he left, and then, just came on and did their thing and blew my little 12-year-old mind. But yeah, that was something to see and hear, and so then a few months later, after, a few months had passed, and I went into our local Sam the Record Man. And on there on the racks under new releases was the new Judas Priest album, Unleashed in the East. And on the cover is the four main guys and Rob Halford in the center, decked out head to toe leather. And, they had the live concert shot on stage for the cover. And I'm thinking, that is why that guy got booed because people wanted the priest. And yeah, so I had a missed opportunity. It would have been pretty cool to
Yeah.
see Priest back then because then I obviously became a fan after the fact, right? When
Sure.
it's 19, what was the album that came out? British Steel in 1980.
Yeah.
And so it was like, wow, these guys actually opened for Kiss. Oh man, geez, and I got that John Cougar guy. And then a few years later, American Fool, right? So
Yeah.
it all worked out. So don't feel sorry for Johnny. It all worked out for him in
No,
the end. But,
he proved some
so
people wrong that maybe he's worth listening to after
yeah,
all.
and it's
So
crazy. Like this October will be 47 years
my
ago, and
goodness,
I went
yeah.
to my first concert. So
That's awesome. And what a show to start with too, with
yeah,
the
for sure.
yeah, oh, that's fun. Nice. The my last one, it wasn't my first show, but if I had to pick one where it's arguably my favorite because it was three bands sort of at my peak of being a fan of them, this might be the one. So it was Valentine's Day 2002.
Okay.
Weezer was the headliner, so right in the like they were just back with the Green Album, Maladroit's coming out shortly. Another group called Saves the Day, and finally, which again in the university residence, that was one that a lot of the people were like early days of music sharing, like sharing those files and got really into them. It was great. And then the opener that really stood out to me though was a band that many have nicknamed Weezer Junior. They're called Ozma. And yeah, it was another one that I was a big fan going in and a huge fan leaving. And so it had a lot of the sort of the magical ingredients that appeal to me, like the dual lead singer format, of course, was a staple. And the lyrics had these just oddly specific references to things I could relate to easily. Like one of them, they have a song called Game Over, where the lyric is, I bet you don't know how to find our extra life times 99, which is a tip of the hat to Super Mario Brothers 3 in World 1 Level 2, where it's like, I do know how to find 99 extra lives if you keep jumping on the Goombas there. And so all these and it was just one of those ones where I'd been hearing it for years, but I had no idea who sang what. So I was like, oh, that's the bass player singing on this one. That's the lead guitar singing on that one. And so just really, yeah, a solid set. And then perhaps the sort of the chef's kiss at the end was when
Mhm.
Saves the Day came on, and I looked beside me in the general admission crowd, and there's the rhythm guitarist from Ozma standing beside me enjoying the show as well. And so I just yeah, whenever chatted, told him how much I enjoyed it, and I always find it so neat to see like when the musicians also enjoy the live music too. So they played their set and then wanted to catch the rest of it live as well. So it was yeah, just and again Saves the Day and Weezer played great sets as well. But just for the the really solid opening set from Ozma and just see chatting with the guitarist during Saves the Day set that they're a fan much like me. I thought that was pretty cool. So Ozma from 2002, my fifth one on the list.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Nice. But I guess no list would be complete without a whole bunch of honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut. Do you have any off the top of your head that weren't were dangerously close to cracking the five?
Yeah, there's some, there's a show that came back to, was in Thunder Bay back in the summer of 1985, and Helix was headlining, and their opening act, which was kind of almost a co-headliner, was Honeymoon Suite, and they were touring around on their first record with New Girl Now, which was being the big hit. And the thing I remember about them is they played before Helix, but their guitar player, Derry Graham, they opened the show and he was on the floor at the back of the arena floor, and he worked his way to the front of the stage, and I thought, man, is that ever super? And the floor was packed, but they obviously had a few security guys and
Yeah.
they guided him through. Just like memories like that, that was super cool. And going back, the summer of 90, Tesla opened up for Motley Crue in Winnipeg on their Dr. Feelgood tour, and Tesla was cruising around with their Great Radio Controversy record. And back then, Jeff, I mean, those bands were still touring the, pardon my French, the shit out of their records. I mean, the Great Radio Controversy came out in January '89. Here I am in June '90, and they're still touring that same record. And the thing I liked about Tesla was they were the exact opposite of Motley Crue. Yeah, they fall under the rock umbrella, but when Tesla came out, they're a jeans and t-shirt band, whereas Motley Crue, they're all leathered up and everything, right, makeup and whatnot. But Tesla was a real solid opening act. Also, if we're going to talk, you mentioned the Stones concert and AC/DC somewhat kind of opening for them. For me, that would be similar. It was technically a co-headline, but one band similar to AC/DC that should have headlined, but the headliner wouldn't let them, and that was Metallica when they opened for or played with in Minneapolis, and Guns N' Roses closed the show, and Metallica that night smoked them. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't beat that aggression. Opening up with Creeping Death, 50,000 people chant and die. And it's just like, and Metallica just crushed. And funny thing about that show was that was just right after James Hetfield had his accident in Montreal with the pyro. So it was Metallica with a five piece, and
Okay.
James was just strutting around with his cast and is holding the mic, and it was surreal that here's he's just a straight out front man, right? And yeah, so that was a cool show. And then speaking of Guns N' Roses, a year and a half earlier in the summer, the spring of '91, we saw Guns N' Roses in Alpine Valley, and it was their second date of their Use Your Illusion tour. And Skid Row opened, and Skid Row, that was a show where both bands were, especially Guns N' Roses, they were probably the biggest band in the world at the time. Like Guns N' Roses were still a five piece. They still had Izzy with them, and yeah, Skid Row was good. And the funny thing about that show is, Slave to the Grind, Skid Row's records still wouldn't come out for another 2 weeks after the Wisconsin show, and Use Your Illusions didn't come out till 6 months after that show. And Axel and those guys, they didn't care. They were playing songs from them.
Yeah.
You either like it or you go home. And
Yeah.
yeah, so and another fun one was when if you remember Ugly Kid Joe with the song
Yeah.
"Everything I Hate About You."
Yeah.
They opened for Ozzy in '92, and they were fun. They were a fun band. Like they were dressed as surfers, and they just rocked out, and they did a pretty cool medley of Sweet Leaf at that show, which was kind of neat because I guess Ozzy said, "Yeah, I guess yeah, go ahead, just play it. It doesn't matter. It's on my show, whatever." But
Yeah.
yeah, they were a fun band too. Like like just jumping around and basically horse playing, but it was good. So yeah, I guess I could really put my thoughts to other bands that I saw, but even an obscure one would be when Kool and the Gang opened for Van Halen back in 2012.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I mean, they were right out of the box, and you thought, how is this actually going to work? But it actually
But
worked.
it is, yeah.
Yeah, they came out, they opened up with Fresh, and they ended their set with a Celebration,
Yeah.
you know, and they jammed out in the middle, and they had real horns, and they were, I don't know how many of the original guys are left in that band at the time, but
Yeah.
yeah, Cool in the Game, they rocked it so much so I had to buy a shirt.
Yeah, I like it. And I like those ones where it doesn't necessarily look like it'll work on paper, but it just does anyways. And so that's
So,
good.
and I know when we talked previous, I remember talking about when Alice in Chains opened up for Van Halen.
Yes. That's right. Yeah, another one. Yeah. Where you
So,
wouldn't think they are all that comparable, but it works.
no, when
So,
you go from Man in the Box to Pound Cake in like a half hour, I mean, it's like that's quite the change, but it actually was okay.
Oh,
So,
that's fun. Nice. And I like those ones where you mentioned seeing James Hetfield injured. I remember they weren't the opener, but when I got to see Rage Against the Machine a few years ago, Zach, the lead vocalist, had injured his leg somehow. So instead of jumping around on stage, he was just sitting on a monitor, sort of, you know, being a prophet to the audience. And it was amazing because like you're never gonna see another show like that. Like Hetfield was back on the guitar, I'm sure, once the injury healed, but it's sort of cool to see those bands when they're in that phase of a negative ends up becoming a bit of a memorable positive too. So
yeah, and that's the cool thing because I mean they could have easily pulled the pin on the show.
yeah, yeah. But might as
Yet,
well the show must go on, and I'm glad it did.
go
So,
on.
and I like that. And then you've definitely seen a few concerts since October 1979 too. So a nice mix of shows in there, which is good. Nice. For me, a couple of the ones that jumped out again, a nice recency bias for. There's this wonderful cover band called Dwayne Gretzky that
Oh
plays a
yeah.
show. Yeah, they play a show near here once a year or so. And their opener this year was a group called The Brokes, where it was a Strokes cover band, and they did their homework. It was spot on, like all the guitar tones and everything were were right on. It was also seeing Joel Plaskett open for the Hip one year that became a big fan. The Deers opened for Morrissey. The band Hours opened for the Wallflowers. Another one of those trio shows where Finger Eleven and Age of Electric opened for Our Lady Peace in the late '90s, and especially Age of Electric was off the charts that night. Really enjoyed that. One that was out of my wheelhouse, but I really enjoyed was when I saw Bryan Adams in the early 2000s. Keith Urban opened for him, and he's sort of a country singer, but put out like again, it was just neat to see him just totally win over the Bryan Adams crowd there, and so that was pretty solid. I got to see Frank Turner open for himself in 2019, which is fun, where
That's
he
awesome.
played he played a solo set of his most recent album, and then the whole band came out for the second set. So I guess he's sort of like his own opening act in that case. Ben Folds Five opening for Beck. Bare Naked Ladies opened for Blues Traveler on a tour they did together. And it's funny that I'm sure in the States it would have made sense for Bare Naked Ladies to open for Blues Traveler, but in Toronto, it's like they maybe should have switched that around because the
Yeah.
B&L was huge in Toronto. But the of course, I have to give a tip of the hat to Gene Simmons and Company, where I think it was somewhere in the early 2000s at a show in Darien Lake. There's a band called Saliva that came on first, and before Aerosmith came out, there was Kiss, and so
You know what? I
yeah.
saw that show in Minneapolis.
Oh,
And
fun.
yeah, I forgot
Yeah.
about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was fun because it was my only Kiss show so far, but it was great because it was pure theater and just a lot of fun to see. And Aerosmith, of course, was solid, but there was something about Kiss's theatrics that was quite memorable. So for yeah, those and many more for my honorable mentions.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
This was a fun time, man.
Yeah, nice. And that's the and for round four, I couldn't think of a better topic, so I'm glad we're able to discuss those. And who knows what round five will hold.
Well, thanks for having me
Yeah,
on round four, and I'm going out the door.
excellent. Nice. Until next time, Deke.
You bet, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
This has been the 1000 Second Album Podcast. Thanks for sharing some of your time, energy, and attention with us today. Take care.